Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Apollyon. So first of all, a little disclaimer, my throat is kinda hurting a little bit, so maybe my voice sounds a little bit different. Not that it's important or that it concerns you, because I don't usually disclose personal information, I don't think that's why you watch these videos, but sometimes I like to complain, and now that we got that out of the way, we can focus on the run and just kinda go from there. So we're fighting Famine in the very first boss room, and in general, I like fighting him, because he's not that difficult of a fight. I think he's very comparable for a first boss. He's a challenge, but not too much so, and I think that mostly it's just nice that you know what you're gonna get when you fight him. You get a cube of meat, and the earlier you can get it, I think the better it is, because it's essentially gonna have more chances to block something, but also you can use it offensively to deal quite a bit of damage. So if you ever feel like maybe you're lacking behind, and maybe your tears aren't strong enough, you can just decide to go into defensive and just start running into enemies, of course with care, and try to do a lot of DPS with just this particular item by itself. And that's one of the greatest benefits of Cube of Meat, in my opinion. Not only does it work like a passive item, which just kind of protects you from shots sometimes, but also it can be the deciding factor between whether you're gonna get to a certain objective or not. Sure, you know, maybe sometimes you're gonna get hit because you're gonna get a bit too close to an enemy, but that's a word that's very, I would say, that's a very worthwhile risk to take, because if you do manage to pull it off, then you're gonna get to that boss rush, or gonna get to that hush, and you're just gonna get a massive point boost. And getting hit once or maybe even twice is definitely gonna be worth the fact that you're going so much faster. But there are also a lot of enemies which actually don't have contact damage. So for example, a lot of the polyps on the ground, or maybe Mom's foot when it stomps down. And you can really utilize that DPS from that Cube of Meat to deal quite a significant damage from that point forward. And also, as the run kind of evolved here, I would say that the second floor was a bit trolly, because it had Curse of the Unknown, so we weren't really sure which items we're picking up. So I picked up some items, I sucked up a few items. I mainly sucked the one that we got from Super Last, I think. That's mainly because, it's like 9 lives. I don't think it can be any other item, and I didn't really want to pick up 9 lives as my first item, because it does count as 9 items. Even though it's a guppy item, I feel like only picking one of it, and even though I would say in this particular run you still get the guppy transformation, that's not something that you can generally know in advance. So my personal rule of thumb, at least from what I've decided today, is if I find 9 lives as my first guppy item, I generally don't pick it up, but if it's my second one, or of course my third one, then I will pick it up, because of course getting the benefit kind of outweighs the benefits, I would say the negatives of actually picking up 9 items in advance, because item penalty after all isn't huge, it's not that big, but I definitely don't really like picking it up as my first item, just because it doesn't really do anything for me. So, as I was saying, as the run kind of progressed here, we got a few other items, and of course there was Curse of the Unknown. I sucked that one up, and I picked up one random item was in the treasure room. It actually turned out to be Cursed Eye. So at that point, I was feeling kind of salty, because obviously Cursed Eye is not an item you really want to find, and also it can be one of those things that can really kind of screw you over, especially on the boss rush floor. If you only get hit once, you're out and you can't enter back in, because generally, boss rush is gonna take you a few minutes, and even if you get there really early, you're gonna go past that limit where boss rush actually stays open. So generally have one chance and you can't get hit at all, and that's obviously very hard, because the room is very big, sometimes you don't even see the projectiles off the screen, and even if your tear delay is as good as mine is, which means you really charge it up fast, so there's not a lot of room for error, there's still, I would say, quite a high probability of you getting hit at a certain degree, and then of course you're gonna get teleported out. Of course, this is a risk we have to take at this point, because we couldn't know it was Cursed Eye. It actually does work pretty well with some of the other items. Not just items, but also with Lilith, like I explained not too long ago, essentially just triples your damage. So Cursed Eye is definitely not a lost cause, it's not a bad item by any means, it just has this giant drawback, and especially I think in daily runs, it kind of comes to show when you're trying to do some of those big objectives. But when you combine this particular item with a 4 tear delay, and when you see which other items I've gotten, which is Death's Touch, which is penetrative shots and just a damage upgrade. I also have Cricket's Head, I later got Small Rock, Jesus Juice, Lump of Coal, and I think that's basically it. Oh, the Guillotine, of course, the Guillotine is another big one here. And all of those items add up to actually a pretty significant chunk of damage. And not just that, our tear delay, like I said, is amazing, so we're essentially shooting 4 sights for the price of 1, and that's much faster than if you're just kind of going to normal. At least we're doing more DPS than if you just didn't have Cursed Eye. Obviously, like I said, there is this great drawback, but the fact is we're doing much more damage than we would without it, and I feel like just because of that, it's already worth something. Sure, we have to be a lot more careful And sure, you know, there's always that inherent risk, but I feel like sometimes that's exactly what makes a daily exciting. I do imagine a lot of people would just end up quitting as soon as they pick up Cursed Eye, because that is an option they have, and obviously I don't really blame anyone for doing so, because Cursed Eye can really be an annoying item. But in this particular case, because the run turned out to be so good, I feel like it works to its positives and not to its detriment, and I feel like it does become a much more fun experience for all of us, because now we're going through the run that is otherwise very strong, and obviously it would be still even stronger, not even stronger, but it would be definitely very strong even without Cursed Eye. But in this case scenario right now, you're kind of forced to kind of balance around this objective, and you're just trying not to get hit as much, or maybe not charge up when you feel like you might be in danger. And I feel like to some extent that's also very skillful play, because a lot of the damage, I'd say most of the damage in this game, isn't unavoidable. The most damage that you're gonna take in a game is usually due to you just standing in a compromising position. And obviously sometimes it might feel unavoidable because something comes at you so fast you really can't react, but if you just maybe stood in another position which was maybe a little bit smarter, that's usually gonna be to your, not to your benefit, but that's usually gonna be something that's gonna save you from taking that bit of damage in the first place. So it's just one of those things which I feel like made this run a little bit more interesting. And not just that, obviously I think sometimes it's nice to play with items that I feel like we find suboptimal. And even if it was Soy Milk, for example, that's an item I would never pick up unless maybe in a very dire circumstance where I pick up Libra beforehand. It's still one of those things which I feel like it's nice just to experience, I would say, a difficult run. Not a difficult run, in this case obviously it's not a difficult run, but a run that maybe has some difficult elements to it, and that's not just a cakewalk. Because I feel like runs and challenges like this is exactly what separates the players from maybe just performing or just breaking or just really trying to get to the end and putting all of their skill that they have into the game. And obviously not just skill, but also ingenuity. So like, maybe do you know if this particular item synergizes well with some other items? Like at a certain point there was marked, and I figured that if I have a charging item, it's only gonna benefit me, because of course that only increases my tier delay, because that's what mark does as a passive upgrade. And I feel like in this case that's definitely what I should have picked up, because it would be even better. I think I would be at 3 tier delay instead of 4. But the problem was I wasn't sure, and because I don't pick up Cursed Eye often enough, I figured, you know, there might be a small probability of this actually being a very bad synergy, or like an anti-synergy in some sense, and that would just kind of ruin the run for me. So I decided to skip mark, but someone who maybe picks up Cursed Eye a little bit more often, or maybe knows a little bit more about the game, would know that marked is great, and maybe that increases his DPS a little bit, and maybe that saves him like from a hit of damage. And just based on that, you know, you get small increments of advantages that way, and that's really how you're gonna end up ranking in those really high spots when you try maybe to get to the end, or maybe when you play the daily enough times in a row to really know what you're doing. So once we got through the Void, obviously it's going to be the final floor of this particular run. We're going to the Cathedral, and we finished in a pretty comfortable spot, like the top 20. Our exploration bonus was actually quite high. I think I explored everything that there was to explore, maybe missed a few secret rooms or second secret rooms, but other than that, I feel like I've done a pretty good job in that regard. Our Shrek bonus was also pretty decent. Our damage penalty was also relatively low. Obviously it was a very strong run, and we had Flight and even the Wafer at the end, so it's not really, I would say, brag worthy, but it's definitely in the lower numbers for me, and at least I feel proud of that. We did miss boss rush, or not miss it, we got teleported out of it and we couldn't retry it, so that was a bit annoying, but all in all still an enjoyable run, although maybe a little bit challenging. And I'm sorry maybe for the slight hiccups throughout the video, as I'm actually trying to regain my composure. Sometimes my voice just kind of breaks a little bit, and then I try to continue, and then it doesn't really work out in the way I would expect it. But still, I hope that I did provide, I would say, a fluent stream of consciousness and thought, which you've come to expect up until this point. And I hope, as always, that you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you next time.